Hello, everybody, and welcome to Marine Mammal Monday Ridiculous Rescues Edition. So, if you're looking for Marine Mammal Monday, you are in the perfect space. We are here. Actually, we've got some guests joining us today where we're going to talk all about some ridiculous rescues, some memorable moments, and these animals that we all love so much. Welcome in to Marine Mammal Monday Ridiculous Rescues Edition. Now, for folks that are just joining us here, welcome. I'd love if you could add into the comment box, let us know sort of who you are, where you're tuning in from, and if you've been to a Marine Mammal Monday before. We always love to have our repeat folks joining us back again. So I'd love to get to say hello to you all. And again, hello and welcome to everybody. I'm really excited for today. We have a couple of guests that are joining us to bring their expertise to the forefront and share with us some of the ridiculous rescues that they go on. Now, we know that we love these animals so much, but they're not always very convenient. So, there are definitely no shortage of ridiculous rescue stories. So, we're bringing in as many as we can today. But thank you all for joining us today for this Marine Mammal Monday. Welcome, Diane from San Simeon, California. Ooh, nice. What is it like over there right now? Do you have any marine mammals out by you? Wonderful. And welcome to Nanette Stringer, currently in Palo Alto. Welcome. Thank you for coming today for our Marine Mammal Monday, our Ridiculous Rescues edition. It'll be a lot of fun getting to explore some of those stories and what it's like going out on some of these more ridiculous rescues. Hello, Elisa. Ooh, here in San Francisco. I am in Sausalito right now at the hospital, but I live in San Francisco. So hope you enjoyed a little bit of the rain today. If you got any of that, it was really nice to get a little bit of rain here in California. We always need it. Oh, and welcome back, Carrie. I see that you came to the center a couple weeks ago. I'm so glad that you were able to come on site. That's so special. We did recently reopen back up to the public, so it's been really special here in Sausalito. So, welcome back, Carrie. And I'm so glad, Diane, that you're at the Elephant Seal Rookery too. That's so exciting. Welcome, Najim from San Francisco. Ooh, another San Francisco one. Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today. And hello, Mel from Connecticut. I'm so glad that you love these Mondays. We love that you come all the way from Connecticut. It really makes my heart so full. So, thank you all for coming. This is so exciting. We're here for an extra special edition of Marine Mammal Monday. We have a couple of guests that are going to be joining us here to talk about some ridiculous rescues, some of the crazy ways that we have to go and pick up some of these amazing animals that we all love. Now, we are going to get started here in just another minute or so. I want to give time for folks that are just filing in. So, welcome everybody to Marine Mammal Monday. Oh, and welcome, Mark, our fish smoothie expert from TMMC. Excellent. We love a good volunteer fish smoothie expert. For those of you that may have no idea what that is, for some of our animals that cannot yet handle eating things like whole fish, we will make a fish smoothie that helps us to try our best to mimic what mom's milk might be like. It has an excellent recipe. It is whole fish. Here we're using whole herring, some added salmon oil to mimic some of the fattiness that our marine mammal moms are able to make. They're doing a lot of work, giving a lot of those nutrients out. And then water for texture. So we blend it all up, and it looks actually quite a bit like a chocolate milkshake. However, smells nothing like that. It definitely, you get that fish experience. Welcome, welcome. Oh, and hello to Lisa. Welcome. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get us started here, but thank you all for coming today to Marine Mammal Monday, our Ridiculous Rescues edition. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you today. Now, today we have myself. My name is Crystal. I'm the Public Programs Coordinator here. We're going to be joined a little bit later on by Shayla and Petra, some of our experts out in the field as our Operations Coordinator and our Response Dispatcher. And then, as always, in our comment box, the magical Katie is here to help answer some of those questions as we go along as well. Now, in case you are unfamiliar or you'd love a little recap of who we are and what we're doing here at the Marine Mammal Center, we are a global leader in marine mammal health, science, and conservation, and we are the largest marine mammal hospital in the entire world. So we are a nonprofit here. So we have a small but mighty staff, but a really amazing, dedicated volunteer force that is really driving everything that we do here. So we have about 1,300 volunteers that are on our team that are making everything that we do here possible. Now, the work that we do here is really driven through rescue, rehabilitation, research, and release. So you can be a part of this process anytime you see an animal that you might be concerned about. You can feel free to call our hotline here in California. That number for that 24-hour hotline is going to be 415-289 SEAL. Tried to make that last bit as easy to remember as possible. Now, what this starts and how this goes through that whole process is you can see in the upper left hand corner a picture of what a rescue might look like. So, using our really dedicated and incredibly well trained volunteers to get closer to that animal in order to safely bring them to hospital and on site so that we can further find out what's going on with that animal. We'll start that rehabilitation typically by thinking about a diagnosis. We'll do an admit exam, and anything that you can do at a human hospital, we can do here at the center as well. So, in the top right corner, you can see a picture of some care being given. So, what's happening there is a sea otter getting an ultrasound in that photo. So, truly anything you can do at a human hospital, things like ultrasound, x rays, we have a surgical suite, all of what everything to best care for each and every individual. Then we are really driven through our research as well. So you can see in the bottom left, that's a picture out of our lab here that we have on site. And we're doing all of this research to better inform global ocean conservation, trying to see what's going on in the ocean that's driving these marine mammals into human care. And then down at the bottom right, everyone's favorite, definitely my favorite, some of that release, giving these marine mammals a second chance at life back out into the ocean. Then there's what I get to do, and my very favorite part. I call it almost like our silent R here. We've got our education, since everything else starts with an R. And if you're a little bit more curious about more educational opportunities, how we can continue to learn and spread the word, feel free to visit our website. That's going to be marinemammalcenter.org. And we have all sorts of activities, virtual programs, curriculum on there as well. You'll see there's an education tab up at the top. And if you go into adults and families, there's an online learning resources section. Now, currently on site today, we are caring for about 48 patients. We have about 20 northern elephant seals. We are starting to dip in elephant seal numbers. So, if you saw last month's, this might look very different. We're sort of starting to end when we would expect northern elephant seals in our care as those pups are learning how to eat fish on their own. They're bulking up and they're headed back out into the ocean. We do have about 13 California sea lions. We're starting to see them coming back into our care for right now a big variety of different reasons. We've got about 7 harbor seals on site still. Again, much smaller numbers than before. They're just on their way out our doors as they're bulking up and learning how to eat fish on their own. We've got about 6 Guadalupe fur seals in our care right now as well, and then 2 Hawaiian monk seals in our Hawaii location, Ke Kaiola or the Healing Sea. Now, we are open to the public here at the Sausalito Center. So you can definitely come visit, just like one of our folks who's watching right now already has. So you can come on down or up from wherever you are to come and visit us here in Sausalito, where you might get the chance to see some of these patients on site as they're working towards getting better again for their second chance at life. You do just need to reserve a ticket online in advance. They are free. It's just a timed ticket so that we know where you're coming. And you can do that through our website. Again, that's going to be marinemammalcenter.org. Now, today, though, we are really diving into what some of those rescues are like, and especially some of those ridiculous rescues. So, we are joined by a couple of folks, but as a little reminder of who we are and where we cover about 600 miles of California coast that go from San Luis Obispo down in the south all the way up to Mendocino County up in the north. We have that hotline that I referred to earlier. That's 415-289-SEAL. And then we also cover Hawaii, where we have our range there that we cover. We have our main hospital, Keikaiola, on the main island. However, we do have folks in other areas as well. We just opened up a Maui section as well. And so our statewide for all of Hawaii hotline is up right now. That's 1-888-256-9840. But now that we've gotten a little bit of background about who we are and where we are, I'm going to invite our guests to join in. So, welcome, welcome. Today we have a couple of guests. So, Shayla, would you mind telling me a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how long you've been at the center?
Yeah, so I am an operations coordinator at our San Luis Obispo field office. That means I oversee the day to day operations of our field site, including rescue and animal care, helping out our volunteers, making sure they have everything they need to be successful. And I started at the center as a volunteer myself about 5 years ago, and then I was an intern and I eventually became a staff person.
Excellent. Well, thank you and welcome so much to Marine Mammal Monday. We also have Petra who's here with us. Petra, likewise, would you mind sort of introducing yourself, what you do, and how long you've been with the center?
Absolutely. So my name is Petra. I'm here on Maui, where I'm the response dispatcher for the Hawaiian monk seals on Maui. We respond to all haulouts here on Maui. And besides doing rescues, we also do a lot of outreach and educating the public about this endangered species. I have been with the center since March when we launched our operations here on Maui.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And again, welcome to Marine Mammal Monday. It is such an honor to get to have you both here. So thank you so much for taking time out to come and share a little bit more about your experiences. Now, when it comes to rescues, we know that each and every rescue starts the same way. We really rely on folks just like you in the public to call in animals that might need a little bit of extra care that maybe you're unsure about. Now, we always suggest that you keep your distance, but give us a call to let us know what's going on. So, by starting that off, you're going to call those hotline numbers that are again listed right on the screen. But after that gets called in and it goes to dispatch, this is where it gets different for every single rescue. So they're going to send out the closest team to where you're calling in from. But we know that from there, every animal is different, every situation is different, and it can be a little bit more ridiculous. So, Shayla, I would love if you could take us down towards this sort of lower area of San Luis Obispo to share one of your ridiculous rescues.
Yeah, thanks, Crystal. So at a field office, we are kind of like a mini version of our main hospital. We rescue animals, we provide stabilization care before transporting our patients to Sausalito for kind of the bulk of their care under the veterinarians. Um, and we frequently rescue multiple animals in a day, but it's not every day that we get to rescue two animals on the same stretch of beach within view of each other, like we did on Easter Sunday this year. Our first call was for an elephant seal who we named Eggshell. And while we were in the process of responding to that animal, the same reporting party said, hey, there's this other smaller animal too. And we found the second animal to be a Guadalupe fur seal, who we named Yoke. As we were responding, since Guadalupe fur seals are a threatened species, we prioritized that animal and decided to rescue them first. While some helpful members of the public stood by Eggshell, our elephant seal, and kept people away while we went to work on our first rescue. Thankfully, we were able to successfully rescue both animals and take them back to our triage site in Morro Bay. And Crystal, you were able to observe these two in care. Do you want to tell us more about how that went?
Absolutely. Now, before I jump a little bit too far into eggshell and yolk, there was a really great question that came up. So, especially since I would love to talk more about their care, Najim had asked if healthy sea mammals ever come to the center as an easy food source. And you can see here from these photos of eggshell and yolk that they are not looking very good. They definitely need that intervention. And so we really rely on highly trained volunteers that are only going to rescue these animals in distress. So the first thing that we do, just like Shayla was saying, is we're going to go there and assess that situation. We need to see if they actually need any care or if it's something that maybe they don't need any intervention at all. So our ultimate goal is always to release these patients back out into the wild. We want them to stay wild. So our expert animal care team is going to take a couple of different steps to ensure that so that they don't habituate and rely on humans. So we're going to keep our voices low while we're in care. We're going to really minimize the amount of time that we spend with them, and making sure that we come up with any and all plans beforehand. So you can kind of see this as we cared for Eggshell. So Eggshell came in as a northern elephant seal pup. Was again rescued in this past April down in San Luis Obispo, came in at about 90 pounds. Now, for reference, because 90 pounds can sound pretty big, northern elephant seals as pups, uh, when they're first born, are about 75 pounds. At 1 month, they should be closer to about 300 pounds. So you can see how this animal was incredibly malnourished. Also, I came in with a little bit of trauma, so had a cut in its sort of like front right flipper on just what we might imagine as our pinky finger there. So just a smaller cut. It did heal pretty well. But while Eggshell was with us, she was with us for about 3 months. What we were really doing was making sure that Eggshell was no longer going to be malnourished, so could be back out into the wild for that second chance of life. So after being here with us for that 3 months, learning how to eat whole fish on her own, she was successfully released at about 130 pounds. So you can see here actually that she's got her little hat tag still on. So if you see at the top of her head, there's a little bit of white. Those are ways that we are able to differentiate our patients while they are in our care. Because even though they're all incredibly cute, they all look exactly the same. So you can see on the right picture there, that's Hathor, who Eggshell was released with. Sometimes we will release these animals with other animals as well. And without that hat tag, I don't think I can tell who was who. So when it comes to things like measuring how much food they're getting or if any medications might be needed, those hat tags can be great indicators of who's who in there so that we don't spend too much time in those pens and we can quickly do our jobs, while decreasing the amount of habituation that might occur. So, um, luckily for Eggshell, had a nice, easy time. Was here with us for just about 3 months while she bulked up, learned how to eat that whole fish on her own, so that she could successfully go back out into the wild. And no need to worry about that hat tag. I know she's still got it on in her release, but they are a cornstarch based bioplastic that, when they biodegrade, actually turn into a non toxic lactic acid. So they typically fall off in care at the hospital, but because they are just glued on, sometimes they take a little while to fall off. So might, like in Eggshell's case, fall off in the ocean, but we know that it's just going to biodegrade into that non toxic lactic acid. So we're never too worried about it. Then Yolk, our Guadalupe fur seal, rescued on the same day, was in with our care for malnutrition again, and enteropathy, which is sort of like a swelling or an irritation of the small intestine. Now, while that might sound really intense, that's actually something that's pretty common in our Guadalupe fur seals that we see. So, not too hard for us to treat. We've got a little bit of a handle on that condition now and understand it. So after some medication and lots of food, again was able to be re-released back out into the ocean for that second chance at life. Now, Yolk came in and was about 17 pounds. And you can see in these photos looking nice and plump there, actually basically doubled in weight over the 2 month span that Yolk was with us and was released at about 34 pounds. So over 2 months, basically doubled in size, which was really special. So, Yolk was released in Chimney Rock, which is a little bit north from where we are here in Sausalito, and was released with a couple of other Guadalupe fur seals as well, named Ferocious and Sandarella. Excellent. Now that we've talked a little bit about what some of these rescues can be like and how wild it can be, a 2-for-1 rescue is definitely on the ridiculous end here. I'd love if we could also take a peek at some of the things that might look different when doing rescues in our Hawaii range. Petra, would you mind telling us a little bit more about what it's like to do rescues in Hawaii?
Absolutely. Well, here in Hawaii, we're working on several islands. And here you can see our Hawaii hospital, Keikaola, which is a hospital that's dedicated to only treat the endangered Hawaiian monk seal. And as you might know, there's only about 1,500 seals left of this seal. And maybe we can go back a slide because I wanted to show also the photo there in the left corner, that not only do we treat the Hawaiian monk seals there at the hospital, but we also respond to all haulouts and try to talk to people, educate the public, and give the seals the space on the crowded beaches of Hawaii. Thank you, Crystal. So I wanted to tell you a story about a seal that did not have such a charismatic name as Shayla's seals, but RL72 was just as cute as well. And here we have a map on the left of Hawaii. And you can see in the lower right corner is the Hawaii island where our hospital is. And where the red dot is Maui and the other Hawaiian islands. And that is where this rescue took place. On the other side of the slide, you see RL72 snoozing away on the beach, an endangered Hawaiian monk seal, 3-year-old male. We rescued him at the end of March this spring after he had been observed with a trailing fishing line coming out of his mouth. It turned out that he had swallowed the fish hook. So we rescued him. He was treated, had surgery, and released 3 weeks later. And I would love to share the story of how it all went down. So a public caller called us that this seal was hauled out on the beach, this remote beach you see on the right-hand side, the northwest end of Maui. And we sent out one of our volunteers to look at the seal. And this volunteer was highly trained and could see that there was a fishing line trailing out of his mouth. You can see there is an arrow to it there, and it's even hard to see on the photo. Juvenile seals are rare to see. I mean, first of all, the species is a very rare species, and they haul out not in rookeries like other seals you see in California. They're mainly solitary. So when they haul out, it could pretty much be anywhere on the island. And the juvenile seal is even more rare. So we knew we had a seal with a problem. We needed to act now. But an endangered seal and a remote area took some work to get in order. We had to work with NOAA Fisheries, who's our partner in this, and the Division of Aquatic Resources, and to organize people to this remote area and equipment and safely rescue this seal took most of the day. As you can see, sun is almost setting when we finally get started on this rescue. Here you can see the seal and how we gently and calmly hoax the seal into this cage. This is a tropical climate, so overheating is a big concern. So we spend a lot of time making sure the seal doesn't get overheated and stressed. So once he was in the cage, and then we needed to figure out how to get this cage to the hospital on a different island. We now have a cage for that is about 150 pounds, and then a seal that turned out to be 257 pounds. So now we have 400 pounds that needed to go to different islands. So how do we do that while not stressing out RL72? Well, first, we had to get from the far corner of that beach. Yeah, that was a good slide. Thank you, Crystal. The far end corner, you see the rocky point down there. We had to get him from that corner to a parking lot about half a mile away. So the first thing was there's another photo there coming up this slope from the sandy beach up to the berm, which was quite an elevation on a slippery slope. And then we had to take the cage down this quarter-mile boardwalk to the end of the beach, and then up another slippery slope. This walk took us about 2 hours with 10 people, and at the end, we actually had to get some local surfers coming out of the water at sunset to help us carry this heavy cage out of the area to the parked truck. But here he was. RL72 was safe, cool, and secure, maybe not happy to be rescued in the cage in the truck. Now we could see the fishing line more closely, and you can see it's resting on his dorsal, on his back there. You can see the line. We could still not see a hook, but we knew he needed help. So now was time for the next stage of the journey. The Coast Guard, a different partner, came in with their big C-130 to Maui, and it was time for RL72 to go to Kona, to the different island, and to the hospital. So here we are loading RL72 onto the big Coast Guard plane. We just backed him up, and on the plane was TMMC, Marine Mammal Center veterinarian, ready to take care of RL72. And he is now continuing his journey to the next island. So here is the hospital, Keikola Hospital, where more than 40 Hawaiian monk seal have been rescued. That might not sound like a lot, but if you think there's only 1,500 Hawaiian monk seals, that's quite an astonishing number when you think about the reproductive potential for these seals as well. And here you can see RL72. He's at the hospital getting a few days to calm down after the first part of the rescue and getting evaluated and x-rayed by the veterinarians at the hospital. It was found that with x-rays that he had a big hook that was lodged in his esophagus, and everybody decided that it was time to do surgery. And I don't know, Crystal, maybe you wanted to talk a little bit about what happened during that time at the hospital.
Yeah, thank you so much, Petra. I'd love to get to share a little bit. So, RL72 had a pretty interesting story here so far, but it gets even more ridiculous. So, with that hook lodged in his esophagus, we tried a couple of different techniques first. So, like Petra said, we found it using these x rays first. Then we decided we'd try every non invasive procedure. So we started with a scope and these very specialized de-hooking tools to see if we could go in and figure out if we can get that hook and that line out without having to be invasive. Unfortunately, it was lodged in so tightly that we found that we really needed to do invasive surgery, so that gastrotomy. So that's what you can see here in this photo is them prepping RL72 for that gastrotomy. This is actually what they were able to remove. So it's an incredibly large hook. It does take up that person's entire hand. Having seen one of these examples in person, I expected it to be smaller, but they are quite large hooks. Now, after that time, where RL72 was under surgery to get to that hook. He was given a lot of antibiotics, fluids, GI support, and also some pain medications. And this continued for a little bit after that surgery as well. Now, RL72 was also kept dry for a little period of time, so in a dry docking area, so we could really make sure that that wound was going to heal over well and that he was going to be feeling okay before exposing him to that added sort of extra exercise when it comes to swimming again. But after just a pretty short period of time, he was ready for release to the wild. Petra, how long was he here with us again?
He was at the hospital for 3 weeks until it was determined that his incision was well healed. He didn't have any infections, and he looked strong and eager to go back in the wild. And here on those photos, you can see staff from Keikaola together with volunteers getting ready for the release. And you can also see in the middle photo that there's a satellite tag on the back of RL72. That was put there by the NOAA folks and the TMMC folks, so you could keep track of him once he was released to ensure he did not end up in trouble and could do well in the wild again. Once they opened the cage, RL72 did not look back and hauled straight for the ocean, ready to get back to the wild. And we can talk a little bit about the release later, but here you see a map of the island of Hawaii, where Kona, where our hospital is, and his first tracks. So for a long time, he hauled around and swam around the Kona area, probably foraging and being happy to be back without a fishing line and a hook. And then at some point, a few weeks later, they saw that he was starting to head northwest toward Maui and Molokai, which is about 100 miles. And he hung around there for that area while this satellite tag was transmitting when he was surfacing. And lo and behold, he was doing great and swam far. And on the next slide here, he came back to Maui. I was so excited. I was down and responded to a call, and here he was, back on Maui exactly 3 months later after he was first rescued. He was on Maui. You can see his incisions is clean. He has a full belly. He looks fantastic. And he hung around on Maui for about a week, and then he swam back toward the island of Hawaii, which the channel is about 30 miles. And it looks like he's been hanging back on the island of Hawaii ever since. So it's a successful story of a rescue of one of the 1,500 endangered monk seals that we could help back to health.
Thank you so much, Petra. What a story. It's always so special when you get to work with the most endangered seal or sea lion in the entire United States. So that is really impactful. And I love that you got to see him resighted back on Maui. Getting to see that impact right away is so, so special. Now, I can see a couple of questions, but I have one more story that I'd really love for us to dive into, and then we'll get to some of those questions popping up. So I do see you. I think that these are excellent questions that we will answer. But before we get there, Shayla, I know that you have a story that has some very weird logistical challenges as well. Would you mind sharing some more about that other rescue down in our southern area?
Yeah. This is a story that's very close to my heart. It's a rescue I kind of orchestrated and planned the whole process for. We have Netta, who was a yearling northern elephant seal. And Netta was reported to us entangled in a fishing net by our partners at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. They have students out there who do elephant seal research and monitor the population frequently. So when they saw this animal, they gave us a call on our hotline, and we were able to respond. And this was back last November at a time of year where, with Netta's age, we weren't certain how long she would be sticking around on the beach. Yearling elephant seals haul out in the fall for a quick rest before heading back out to continue feeding in the open ocean. So we had to act really quickly. We didn't know how much time we had. We had to receive special permission from NOAA to enter the area where the other elephant seals were also resting. And as you can see, there were plenty of other animals around her. Many were resting, but there were also some young males practice fighting almost above her as well. You can see that on the left photo where she's got that bright green netting, and those two juvenile males are right above her. And our biggest question was if we could get to her safely and then get her off of the beach. We didn't have a good idea how much she weighed. We only had our guesses. And Netta did end up weighing around 280 pounds. And we were able to get her into this big metal carrier that weighed an additional 200 pounds. And it took 8 of us to get her off the beach to our waiting truck. I'm jealous of the crates in Hawaii that seem a little lighter than our metal carriers. But it sounds they have just as hard a time getting them off the beach as Petra was telling us. So back in Morro Bay at our triage site, we were able to get a better look at her entanglement. You can go to the next slide, Crystal. And it looked like the net might not be too embedded into her skin, which was a very good sign. And so with this knowledge, we began to cut, starting from the back of her, working our way towards the head where that netting was all bunched up and the thickest. And we did successfully remove the netting from around her body and found that injuries from the net were really minimal. And seeing Netta reach a flipper up to scratch her face once the net was removed, it was a moment I will never forget. It makes me cry whenever I think about it. It was just a really great moment. And so after that, when the net was removed, she did get a quick once-over from our veterinarian. We gave her a flipper tag, and we were able to release her after just 3 days in care back onto the same beach where we picked her up, which is a rare occasion. I know there was a question about that, and we don't usually release them onto the same beach they were picked up. Animals are typically in rescue locations that are unsafe, like public beaches or places where they shouldn't be located, docks, sidewalks, even roads. And we have a few release sites that are safe areas and good reentry points for the patients to acclimate to the wild. So this was a rare, really cool opportunity to just kind of put her back where she came from. And so we got to watch her fade back into the sea of elephant seals that she had come from. And that was also pretty rewarding.
Thank you so much for sharing these inspirational stories. I love that you came with all of these wonderful, ridiculous rescues, but in some cases also a ridiculous outcome. So coming in with all of these crazy different things and knowing that you were able to help get these animals to get to the care that they need so they could be released back out into their ocean homes again for that second chance at life. Now, really quickly, I'd love to take a look at some of the other releases that we've had. So this is for last year, for 2021. We have a short video that I like to play just to talk a little bit more and to share a little bit more about some of the impact that we can have and some of the releases that we're able to perform. So thank you not just to Shayla and Petra for doing this hard work, but to all of the folks that are involved. Thank you to every volunteer that we have that makes this work possible. And thank you to you as the public for calling in these animals that are in need. Now, I do want to address a couple of the questions that came in that were excellent questions. So, we did have some photos of animals that were released together. And so, there was a question around whether or not those animals are supportive of one another. And what we do see is that when we're releasing these animals together, it's more out of convenience. The day that these animals are well is the day that they get back and released out into the ocean. Our goal here is to be as temporary as possible so that these animals have a successful reentry back out into the wild. We do often house some of our animals together, though, so that they have some of that practice socializing with one another, but also competing with one another. It always helps to know that an animal is going to eat well in the wild if they have to sort of compete with their pen mates a little bit for that food as well. So it can be a good way that we can tell how that animal is doing. But generally speaking, it's not something that we're looking for releases in particular. Many of these animals tend to be pretty isolated out in their natural environment, out in the open ocean, unless they're on land for things like breeding or molting, which is when we tend to see them most. So we often think that they're a little bit more social than they typically are. So there are wonderful ways that you can get involved, though we want to make sure that these animals are giving every chance that they have to go back out into the ocean. Oh, I'm sorry, one more question. Eliza asked if there are other species of seals or sea lions in Hawaii besides the monk seal. And great question. The Hawaiian monk seal is the only seal or sea lion in Hawaii. In fact, they're the only warm water seal in the world today, which is extra special. So, adding on to a lot of those incredible reasons why we care for this animal. Oh, and I think Petra, would you like to add anything on to that, working with these animals?
No, I think that you said it exactly right. The Hawaiian monk seal is like the only tropical seal, and then there is the Mediterranean monk seal, and then the West Indian monk seal is extinct. So there's very few of these left, but nobody else here in Hawaii except the Hawaiian monk seal.
Excellent. So we do also have other marine mammals in the Hawaii area, things like dolphins, whales, those kinds of things. But K. Kaiola was specifically made in order to best care for these incredibly endangered animals. Excellent. Now, we do try to make sure as well that their time here with us is as stress free as possible. So, I do see another question in there from Pam asking if we ever medicate the patients on the way to the hospital to calm them down, thinking about that stress. Now, while we don't often make that choice, it is typically something that we wait until we can assess them so that we know that any medication that we give them is going to be the right choice. We always wait for sort of veterinary approval and looking at that animal before we make any decisions. So that's not something that we often do. We do try our best to minimize stress as much as possible, though. So even in some of these ridiculous rescues, we are doing our best. You might have seen those boards to kind of obscure the human figure, make us seem a little bit less like people. Even in situations like this, you might have heard from both Petra and Shayla the planning that went into this so that all of that talking can happen beforehand, before we're going on to the beach, before we're getting close to those animals. So, again, we can be as silent as possible, minimizing that stress as best as we can. Now, if you'd like to continue to be involved in this work, some of this rescue, this rehab work that we're doing here, we are doing our very best here to rely on folks like you. We have about 1,300 volunteers that are incredibly dedicated and very trained in order to be able to do this work. So, feel free to volunteer. We are always looking for more. You can look for that on our website. But other ways to be involved are to let us know when you see an animal that you're not so sure about that maybe looks a little bit off. If you call our hotline, I have some listed there for California, Hawaii, and also Maui. To get in touch with us so that we can send that team out to assess that situation, see if human intervention is necessary or not. Now, if you aren't in California or Hawaii and you still want to get involved, definitely look to see who's around you. Support the center or places like us. Take a look, see if there's a rehab center nearby. Think about how you might be able to support and learn more about your local species. Or you can always visit us here at the center or learn more at our or I'm sorry, excuse me, at our website as well. I got so used to saying hotline. At our website and visit us at marinemammalcenter.org to learn more about how your everyday actions can also impact these animals. Now, thank you again so much to Petra and Shayla for taking some time to talk with us today. If you liked this Marine Mammal Monday, please come back to our next one. So we have one scheduled for Monday, September 12th to give us a little bit of that holiday off, where we are going to be celebrating International Coastal Cleanup Day and talking about the ways that our individual actions, or better, our collective actions coming together, can best impact these animals, especially when it comes to things like ocean trash. So, thinking about all of the different ways that we can get involved there as well. If you have any more questions, please feel free to continue putting those into the chat. Oh, I do see one more question here that
And
we'll
I
have
can
the
get
time
this
to
one.
answer.
So Elisa asked, how did the elephant seal with the netting get isolated from the others at the crowded beach so it could be rescued? So as we were talking about, we're using those big herding boards. We got lucky the day of the rescue that we found the animal kind of up against the cliff. So we had one cliff wall that acted as like a natural barrier. And then we only had to kind of come around on two sides and then have the carrier there. So we were working up against that cliff, and then we had borders kind of around the working area that were also facing outwards to make sure that animals weren't coming in towards us. And we also had some help from the state parks rangers to do that as well.
Thank you so much for that. There are definitely a lot of great questions coming in. So, thank you everybody for your participation. I know that some of these more ridiculous rescues add to some ridiculous questions. So, thinking about the ways that we're out there in these spaces, keeping not only the animals safe, but also the people safe can be a little bit tricky. So, thank you, Shayla, for mentioning that double layer too there so that we can make sure that every person is safe as well as the animals. Again, so thank you so much to Shayla and Petra for coming on today, sharing your expertise with us, and letting us all learn a little bit more about what it's like to have some of these more ridiculous rescues. Thank you again, and thanks everybody for joining us today and for listening in. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Marine Mammal Monday and that we see you again next month. Thanks, everybody.